let's talk about First Amendment auditors.
As the sun goes.
So today I feel compelled to talk about First Amendment auditors. I've been seeing more and more of their videos pop up on my YouTube feed, and there's some things that I want to discuss in relation to private security officers. Now, these First Amendment auditors, and I say that in quotes because they are not appointed by any official means. They're not elected by the public. It is a title that they have elected to give themselves. So that being said, I mean, there is a First Amendment right. However, I don't always agree with their methods and tactics. A lot of times they are out there antagonizing and intentionally trying to catch the attention of police, which in my mind could be viewed as interference. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute here. But first, I wanted to give a little background as to why this First Amendment has been called into question at government buildings. So not long after 9/11 occurred, the Department of Homeland Security was formed, and they issued some bulletins to law enforcement. And in these bulletins, they described the indicators of a pre-attack from terrorists. And these pre-attack indicators, some of them were involving photography and videography of government buildings or other soft targets. And so the DHS put out some bulletins to all law enforcement and to government contracted private security companies regarding what to look for in a pre-planning of a terrorist attack. And a person with a cell phone taking pictures or video, or a person with a camera taking video and pictures of government facilities was on that list. And that set the stage for people's First Amendment rights to be violated while on or near government facilities. And there have had to been some bulletins released to clarify the First Amendment right. And take a look at this next shot here. So what we're showing here on the screen is a bulletin released by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. This bulletin went out to all federal protective services, police officers, and private security officers contracted by government agencies. The paragraph goes on to say, the purpose of this bulletin was to remind FPS personnel and private security officers that the public has the right to photograph the exterior of federal facilities from public forums. This next page goes on to differentiate between the regulations that guide the recording of interior facilities versus the exterior of a facility. One important thing to note on this page is the center sentence that states, as a reminder, photography and videotaping absent a criminal predicate is a First Amendment protected activity. And what this means is that you are protected to do this. However, if there is a reasonable suspicion that you are committing some sort of crime, law enforcement has every right to intervene and to question you. This also applies to contracted private security officers working at a government site. And this next page just goes on the definitions that are put forth in this bulletin, referring to the spaces, exterior, interior, building entrances, lobbies, etc. This page contains some important information for the law enforcement and private security officers. It reads, the right, however, does not authorize a photographer to intrude on restricted space surrounding a security post, create loud or unusual noises, or cause a nuisance, or obstruct the usual use of entrances, lobbies, and other commonly accessible space, impede or disrupt the performance of official duties by government employees or federal contractors, including the PSOs, nor prevent the public from obtaining government services provided in the facility in a timely manner. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, these First Amendment auditors are doing something that attracts attention, and they are intentionally trying to attract the attention of the the FPS, the Federal Protective Services Police, and the private security officers that are contracted by government agencies. And that could be construed as being a nuisance and interfering with their daily duties, which would warrant further investigation. Also, they've been instructed to look for these type of activities as a potential terrorist threat. So they are now investigating something that they have been instructed as a possible threat. If they ask for your ID, they are within their capacity to ID you at this point, regardless whether you believe it is a stop and identify state, because they are now investigating an articulate, reasonable suspicion of a potential crime. And at this point, as a First Amendment auditor, you are in the wrong, in my honest opinion. You have every right to film federal properties. Have at it. But in my opinion, these First Amendment auditors have actually no legitimate reason to film federal properties other than to attract the attention and to draw attention to their activities to create a scene. And that, in my opinion, is a nuisance and interference. So there you have it, guys. Just be careful with people's First Amendment rights. Especially if you work as a government contracted private security officer, you are held to a little bit of a higher standard because your employer and your client that you work for is a government agency. So the same standards are expected of you. I am 100% a staunch constitutionalist. I absolutely love the Constitution. I love the document. I study the document. I study the Constitution. And I really believe that every security officer should study the Constitution in depth and know what it says. But with that being said, I may start a series of videos going over each Constitution, each portion of the Constitution, each amendment, and having a little bit of an in-depth discussion on what those mean and do a little background. So without any further, I'm going to sign off here. Have a good day, guys. Stay safe. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and like, comment, and share. Thank you much.